morning, students. Today we are going to learn the topic from Unit 2 poem The Listeners. This poem was written by Walter Delamere. This is your memory poem. Let us learn the poem now. Glossary: champed, bit and chewed upon noisily. Ferny, consisting of flowerless plants. Turret, a small tower that projects from the wall of a building. Smote, knocked loudly. Sill, a horizontal piece of timber beneath a window or a door. Perplexed, confused, thronging, crowding, hearkening, listening attentively. Listen the poem. Is there anybody there? Said the traveller, knocking on the moonlit door. And his horse in the silence chomped the grasses of the forest ferny floor, and a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveller's head. And he smote upon the door again a second time. Is there anybody there? He said. But no one dissented to the traveller. No head from the leaf-fringed sill leaned over and looked into his grey eyes, where he stood perplexed and still, but only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the long, lone house then, stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to the voice from the world of men, stood thronging the faint moonbeams on the dark stair that goes down to the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. By Walter Delamere. So, the theme of the poem is: a traveller comes to know on the moonlight door of a house in an unknown place. So the haunted house was standing alone in the forest. When the traveller knocked the house and called, no one responded. So the traveller felt confused and stood still when nobody answered him. Again he knocks thrice on the door, asking if anyone is there, but no one responds to his call. Okay, let us see what happened to the traveller. Here the poet is the speaker. That is, traveller is the speaker. Is there anybody there? Said the traveller, knocking on the moonlit door. It was night time. A traveller on horseback was riding all alone. He stood in front of a house. He got out the horse and went to the door. The door looked bright in the moonlight. The traveller knocked on the door. There was complete silence everywhere. And his horse in the silence chomped the grasses of the forest ferny floor, and a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveller's head. The horse was biting and chewing the grass noisily. Here, chomped means chewed noisily. The earth was covered with fen. Here, fen means a flowerless plant with feather-like leaves. So, the earth of the forest was overgrown with fen flowers, which means plants. A bird flew out from the top of the house. It flew above the traveller's head. That is the tower that projects from the wall of a building. And he smote upon the door again a second time. Is there anybody there? He said. Here smote means past tense of smite, struck hard. There was no response to the knock on the door. So the traveler knocked on the door a second time. He wanted to know if there was anyone inside. But no one descended to the traveler. No head from the leaf fringed sill leaned over and looked into his grey eyes. When he stood perplexed and still. Here, sill means flat timber beneath a window. Perplexed means filled with confusion. But no one came down the stairs to meet the traveler. The window sill was bordered with the leaves of climbers. No one put his head out of that window to look at the traveler. No one leaned over the window and looked at his grey eyes. Here, grey eyes means the traveler has grey eyes. So, the word grey is often used to describe unclarity or confusion. So, now the traveler was confused by the strange silence. But only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the lone house then stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men. So the traveler was confused by the strange silence. He stood still at the door, filled with utter confusion. In the lonely house, there were no people. Perhaps it was occupied by ghost. Here, phantom means a ghost. They lived in the house and they listened to the knock on the door. The moonlight fell on the door brightly. The ghost from the unreal world listened to the voice of men from the real world. Here, dwelt means lived. Stood thronging a faint moonbeams on the dark stair that goes down to the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. The dark stairs went down and reached the hall, which was empty. The rays of moonlight fell dim and dull on the door. The still air around was disturbed by the knock of the traveller and his call to know whether there was anyone inside. But no one heard the call. Only the ghost inside the lonely house heard the call of a traveller. So, in this poem, the ghosts are called as listeners. Listeners means people who hear what is spoken. So, only the ghosts inside the lonely house heard the call of the travelers. There is no one to respond to the traveler's call. So the poet concludes the poem. Thus a sense of mystery surrounds the place. The poem creates a feeling of mystery. So let us recall the poem so that I have given you here the summary of the poem. Read the summary well. Thank you, children.